What's up, cool kids? Welcome back to the Langston Fraser Show podcast. I know it's been a minute since I've been away. I completely understand. A lot going on, but it's all really good things. Today, I got a great episode in store for you today. Steve Sands of the Golf Channel and NBC Sports stops by the podcast. It's going to be a great episode from top to bottom. But hey, if you haven't checked out my most recent episode 207 with Corey Langford of UMES, make sure you go back in episode, check that out, and then come check out this brand new episode 208 with Steve Sands of the Golf Channel. Well, of course, it wouldn't be the Langston Fraser Show without a sports update, so here we go. Maryland is going to another bowl game, and it is going to be a good one. December 30th versus Auburn in Nashville, Tennessee. They're getting ready to play the Trans-Perfect Music City Bowl, and that's going to be a 2 o'clock game on ABC, so check that out. Obviously, the rollback in golf is coming with the golf ball. Be on the lookout for that over the next couple of days because it's coming. And whether people like it or not, it's going to change the game and the way people look at golf over the next few years. So that's on the horizon. Nothing official yet, but they say it's coming. Obviously, today's Tuesday, so you know what that means. Yesterday was Monday. The transfer portal opened up to the entire football college scene. Whole bunch of guys are putting on their names into that transfer portal. And again, obviously with NIL over the last couple seasons, it's changed the dynamics of the college football team and their consistency. Just not my teams. Maryland, Michigan State, you name the team, whatever the case may be, it's changed the game of college football. So see where some people land up going into the season of 2024, whether they play bowl games or skip the bowl games and declare their eligibility to the NFL draft. It's a lot to handle, but we're going to see where they all end up. Now, let's look at probably one of the biggest pieces of news over the last weekend, just this past weekend, in the college football playoffs. It's crazy. 4 great teams made it, but there's one team that got kind of, what do you want to call it? Little shady, little, climactic. Got the shorthand, but let me tell you who made it real quick. Michigan made it to the playoffs, Washington Huskies, Texas, and Alabama. But with the perfect season on the 2023 season, Florida State University Seminoles, with a 13-0 record, didn't even make it into the playoffs, which is insane. The Florida State contingency is absolutely going crazy. They're trying to figure out why they didn't make it. Who knows? Obviously, Michigan right now still doesn't have a head coach in Jim Harbaugh due to the whole cheating scandal with one of their former assistants on the sidelines. Who knows what's going to happen? I think he'll be in place for the bowl game, but still, the Big Ten's got a lot to figure out when it comes to that. Hey, guess what? It's Monday night, was last night, so the Heisman Trophy contenders are out, the Final Four. So let's take a look. LSU quarterback Jaden Daniels is in. OSU of Ohio State. Their receiver, Marvin Harrison Jr. is also in. Washington's Michael Penix is in. And Bo Nix Jr. from Oregon is in. They get to find out Saturday night who wins this year's Heisman Trophy. I think it's going to be a fair fight. They're all really good players, but we'll see. Let's change gears to F1 racing. Max Verstappen again. Incredible weekend in Abu Dhabi. Wins for the 19th time this season, moves up to 3rd all-time in the F1 world in terms of overall wins, but he's not far off from getting, the record number of wins he needs, which is just over 100. So we'll see what happens there. Obviously, a lot of golf news with the impending deadline with the PIF and PGA Tour coming up on the 31st of December, just a few days away. We're going to see what's going to happen over the next few weeks, but I'm not going to hold you any longer. Get ready. We're sitting down with Steve Sands of Golf Channel and NBC Sports, and you're in for a good one. So with that, let's dive in to another episode of the Langston Fraser Show. All right, folks, I got a great guest this afternoon. I am pleased to be joined by Steve Sands, one of the great journalists, happens to cover a game that we both love, golf. Steve Sands joined the Golf Channel, which is a part of NBC Sports in 2001, has ties to the DMV area. If you don't know, the DMV, DC, Maryland, and Virginia, a Maryland guy, didn't go to Maryland, but has great Maryland ties, as we'll hear about as well. Went to Colorado State University, got a journalism degree over there, did a quick stint at CNN back in the early 90s, but has been with the Golf Channel for just about 20 years, 20 some odd years. Has interviewed some of the great golfers of our time. So, Steve, welcome to the podcast.
Always great to be with you, Langston. You look great, man. I hope you're doing well.
Thank you, sir. So let's jump right into it. Obviously, this cool assignment for me, this is a little different than my normal podcast, but I was tasked to interview a journalist that inspires me. I learn a lot from, and we've met on several occasions, and you kind of popped into my mind of someone who's kind of on the cutting edge of doing what he's doing, talking to some of these great golfers, covering some of the great news of golf news, I should say, of our time. So let's get into it. How did you get into sports journalism?
Man, that was so long ago, Langston, I don't remember. So when I went to college, like every other kid who played high school football or basketball, he was dreaming of being in the NBA or the NFL. And then I realized that wasn't going to happen. I realized that very quickly. And I always wanted to just do something in sports. So I met with an advisor in school. He instructed me to go see a professor named Fred Shook in the journalism department at Colorado State. And from there, it just kind of took off. I wanted to be back then, there were no podcasts, Langston. There were no cell phones. There was no email. I wanted to be a sports writer. I wanted to be the next Tony Kornheiser, Michael Wilbon, all the great writers who I admired then and still do from the Washington Post sports section. And I just wasn't a good enough writer, Langston. I was, Professor Shook was very honest with me and said, "You're just not that great a writer." He said, "But I do like the way you sound. I think you'd be good on TV." And I kind of laughed. I was a kid at the time. And he said, "No, I think you ought to try being a sportscaster on TV." And once I started doing it, I remember thinking, wow, there's no other way you'd rather make a living than be involved in sports. It just kind of mushroomed from there. But I originally wanted to be a sports writer. I wasn't good enough. I was told to take that direction towards TV. And I've been very, very lucky ever since. And I'm very grateful to Professor Shook, Professor Luft, all the great professors at CSU who took a risk and a chance and interest in a kid who they had never met before. So I'm very grateful.
Wonderful. I would say the golf media industry, the journalism industry that involves golf is very, very small. We all end up knowing each other after a while. But being a Maryland guy, what's that like, having kind of a different perspective covering golf, not alone in this area, but kind of worldwide?
Well, Maryland is home. It's my favorite school, my favorite athletic program. I love Colorado State. We have two sons, one of them who goes there now to Maryland, one who graduated from Maryland. We have our middle son who goes to Indiana. Love them all. Maryland basketball to me is in the blood. I love the University of Maryland. Love the University of Maryland football program. And it's just always been home and always will be my favorite place, my favorite school. And, look, when you are fortunate enough to fly around the world, calling golf, interviewing players, talking sports, go to the Olympics, no matter what the sporting event is, you have to feel awfully fortunate to do that. And I think one of the things that's most important in life, Langston, for you or anybody else who's young and just up and coming, never forget what you came from. Never forget where you came from. Never forget who you come from and where you come from. And home is in the DC, Maryland area to me. Been born and raised in DC, went to high school in Maryland, lived in Florida since 1997. It's 26 years I've lived in Florida, but every single time somebody comes up to me and says, "Hey, where are you from?" I always say DC. I always say Maryland. I live in Florida and I love Florida, but where you are is home. And I think that, there are not a lot of us from the University of Maryland who are out here doing what we do, but there are enough, and plenty of people who have done it at a very high level. So I love the fact that Maryland gets the notoriety it gets. Every chance we can to pump Maryland's tires a little bit, Langston, without getting ourselves in trouble with the boss. We try to do that as well. So it's a very prideful thing to be able to say that you're from the great state of Maryland.
Let's go into this journey kind of with the Golf Channel. It's obviously, if you don't know, already made it back in the mid 90s. Been around, what is it? What are we on? What, 27, 28 years now?
28 years, finishing
I
up
think
28.
my second stint there, I was there in the summer, was the 25th anniversary. So that's just about right. But you've pretty much been there a good chunk of it all. How's your time there at the Golf Channel? Obviously, again, it's run by NBC Universal, NBC Sports, so it sits under the family of NBC Sports. But how's that time
Right.
at the channel been so far?
No, it's been amazing. I remember when I got hired in 2000. I did the Golf Channel exclusively for 12 years, and then I went over and started doing some NBC stuff. And now, because they're owned by the same company, we do both. I remember when I got hired by the Golf Channel, it was basically a mom and pop operation. Joe Gibbs started it, not Joe Gibbs, the former coach.
Yes, correct.
Not our Joe Gibbs, but the Joe Gibbs who's the cable entrepreneur. Very, very bright man, incredible. What he accomplished. The only reason that NBA TV, MLB TV, the NHL Network, NFL Network, Tennis Channel even exists is because Joe Gibbs, the cable entrepreneur from Birmingham, Alabama, started the Golf Channel and succeeded. It was an amazing, amazing venture. But I remember getting hired. It was a mom and pop operation. And then a couple of years in, we got bought by Comcast, and Mr. Gibbs stepped away, and it changed. I mean, it's a big corporate conglomerate. And then we got involved with NBC Sports the next decade, and it's been an amazing run. I mean, it's an amazing company. They care a lot about golf. And the best part about being at the Golf Channel is that when you are doing golf on the Golf Channel, it's the most important thing at the network that day. And that's a really cool thing. In other words, if you're doing sports at Channel 4 in DC, if there's bad weather or if there's a political venture or a serious crime, you could get bounced because sports takes, a step back or two when real things happen, if that makes sense, real in quotations. Well, when you're doing golf at the Golf Channel, it's great. And it's a lot of fun, work with tremendous people, incredibly talented, and it's been a wonderful ride. I hope it continues.
So if you say it continues, and one thing that makes me think about the overall kind of journey of the Golf Channel is how this landscape of golf media is changing. Obviously, a few years back, they launched Peacock, so now they're streaming left and right. You can watch coverage on the Golf Channel from covering more college golf and diversity in golf in itself. But I think one thing that really hasn't changed over the time is what the needle of golf is. And you know where I'm going with this. You helped cover him this weekend in the Bahamas is Tiger Woods, which helped basically when the Golf Channel started. He peaked at the right time, and Golf Channel was coming up at the right time. And without Tiger Woods, I don't think Golf Channel would be what it is today. What's the evolution of golf media for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I agree with you. The timing was perfect. The Golf Channel started in 1995. Tiger turned professional in 96. I mean, it's pretty good timing right there. I think the evolution of golf media mirrors, Langston, the same thing. It mirrors the landscape of media pretty much everywhere. You mentioned streaming. Streaming has taken over. I'm 54 years old. I'll be 55 in a couple of months. Kids your age, our three sons, they're not watching regular television anymore. They're not watching cable and direct TV anymore. They're streaming everything. They're getting things on their phones or their computers that, we never even dreamed of being able to watch when we were their age. And I think the golf media has kind of shrunk because the written word isn't nearly as pervasive as it used to be. It's not nearly as widespread as it used to be. So there are less writers covering golf now. There are more podcasters. There are more pundits. Golf Channel is 24/7. You can make a case that Golf Channel is to golf like what CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News would be to the news world. So the landscape has changed quite a bit, but I think that it's important from a journalistic standpoint. And I try to flag the journalistic flagpole. I try to fly the flag as often as I can. I think it's important to be correct, but I also think, you don't need to be first. It's more important to be correct. So this race to be first, and then somebody throws something out there and you have to react to it, I think is tough for the media because everybody wants to get the story correct. Some people would rather be first than correct. And I think it's important to understand with streaming, with podcasts, with bloggers, with just regular TV folks like us, I think it's important to make sure that you do the right things journalistically to ensure that the information is going to get out to the public correctly. And what I mean by that, Langston, is we are, you, me, whoever, we are the conduit between the athletes of the competition and the audience. And that audience is either on TV or in podcasts or is reading it or however they're listening to it. And I think it's important that as the landscape changes day by day, it seems like hour by hour, it's moving very, very quickly. It's important to make sure that journalistic integrity remains intact. And you do that by having the trust of the athletes, the trust of the coaches, the trust of the instructors, the trust of the caddies, the officials, the tour people at the PGA Tour, no matter what the sport is, but this one is golf. If they don't trust us, Langston, to go and disseminate the information that we receive correctly and honestly, then what are we doing? So as the landscape changes, and the written word becomes less and less, unfortunately, because I think the written word is still such a cool thing. I enjoy getting my hands black from newspapers like the old days. But with all the things going on digitally and all the things going on streaming wise, I still think it's important, and I hope it always stays the same, that trust matters most and the truth must be told at all times when you're dealing in a journalistic term.
And we talk about trust. I think that's one of the pillars of journalism, and you stated it perfectly. I think one of the biggest news stories in the past maybe 3 years that the audience per se hasn't gotten the full picture on, and transparency, is this PGA Tour versus LIV kind of debacle. I don't even know what we call it nowadays, but it's ongoing, and you still see some of the biggest stars going over to LIV. Some players trying to get back on the PGA Tour. Some say it's a mess. Some say it's not a mess. Kind of, what are your thoughts on LIV and the PGA Tour? Obviously, Golf Channel has a majority of the rights to the PGA Tour, but what's kind of your thoughts? Do you think LIV helps the game of golf, or do you think it's hurting the game?
Oh, it's a mess. For sure, Langston. It's a mess. I don't know if it helps or hurts. That's a good question. It may do both, if that's possible. It has certainly hurt the top level of the game to not see the best players in the world competing against each other week in, week out. That's for sure. But I don't think LIV per se has hurt the game. I just don't think it's really helped the game at the highest level, especially, but also at the grassroots, where kids are watching. I don't think it's really doing anything as far as that is concerned. But I'd like to see them come together. I'd like to see the best players in the world compete against each other as often as they can. And I think that the splintered nature of the sport at the highest level is not good for the rest of the game. And it'll be interesting to see over the next few months how it all plays out. But, one side has leverage one time, one side has leverage another time. It's really hard to really decipher who's ahead or who's leading as far as those two entities are concerned. But LIV has not gained a lot of traction as far as viewership in the last year and a half. The PGA Tour took a hit when some of its best players went over to LIV. So it's kind of 50-50 on on those two entities. But as far as helping or hurting, I don't think that golf is better because of LIV. I think that golf being splintered is not great. And the best players in the world going head to head against each other, so fans can either see it in person, Langston, or watch it on TV or listen to it on the radio. I think that's in the best interest of the sport. I also think that the game at the highest level, if you and I go out on a golf cart, have some fun, bet a couple of dollars, do whatever, are we abiding by the rules, steady and fast, or are we picking up a ball that's 2 feet away and saying that's good? I don't know, but at the highest level, when the game is, so visible for everyone else who plays it, I think 54 holes, no cut, music blaring, wearing shorts, and a shotgun start is not professional golf at the highest level. But I'm old, Langston, and I'm a traditionalist. They're not trying to get me to watch them. They're trying to get kids like you to watch them. And we'll see over time if it plays out. We'll see over time if LIV lasts. We'll see over time if the PGA Tour lasts. Who knows what's going to take place. But I don't think it's good for the game. I don't think it's necessarily bad, but it's certainly not good for the game.
And we are all kind of entitled to our own opinion here. But yeah. I think a majority of the golf community can say, Tiger Woods in itself is good for the golf community. Obviously, he comes back after April, has a ankle surgery again. So what is this, the 11th surgery that he's had? He comes back. He has a rather, how do we call it, okay weekend. Not great.
Right.
Not amazing, but we saw glimpses of the old Tiger coming back. So if folks don't know, Tiger Woods, today is the December 4th of 2023. Yesterday ended the final round of the Hero World Challenge that's hosted by Tiger Woods' foundation, TGR. So he came back, shot all right, shot even par for the tournament, finishing 18th in a no-cut field, 20 of his best friends, if we want to call it that. Kind of what's Tiger's outlook on the industry now and kind of the PGA Tour as he takes his player kind of advisory position, and getting more of a face in the game, and you can say the politics of golf now that he's trending on the back end of his career and trying to hopefully get one more victory.
Yeah, he'll be 48 in a few weeks. So, he's not getting any younger. But I think it's really cool that he's taken this public stance and gotten himself onto the policy board of the PGA Tour. He wants to ensure, Langston, that what took place earlier this year never happens again. The tour is a player-run organization. It is unlike the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, and the NHL. Those four sports have a union with the players in it, and it's not an adversarial position, but they go against the owners as they try to collectively bargain a deal between both sides. That doesn't take place in golf. The players have as much say as anybody in the business of the PGA Tour, and Tiger had never been on the policy board before, I don't think, and now he's decided to get on it, Langston, because he wants to ensure that there's transparency, that the players are informed, and that they are involved in making the decisions as the tour moves forward in an economic sense. And I think that when you have Tiger Woods speaking on your behalf, that's a heavy burden. This is not a run-of-the-mill PGA Tour player who might be a little bit more on the obscure side, who is voting on behalf of his peers. This is Tiger Woods. This is Roger Federer and Rafa Nadal and Novak Djokovic speaking for the other tennis players. This is, Tom Brady speaking for the union. This is, that kind of thing. And when Tiger's involved, I think that what happened on June 6th in 2023, when it was announced that there was going to be a framework deal between the PGA Tour and the PIF, which is the fund from Saudi Arabia, the players were all surprised by it, Langston, and I think that didn't sit well with the players. And the players were like, wait a second, we're supposed to be involved in these decisions. That's the structure of the PGA Tour. Well, Tiger got involved because I think Tiger wants to ensure that that never happens again, that whatever decisions are made moving forward, that the players have their say, which is the way it's been set up ever since the PGA Tour began.
Guys, Odyssey is changing the game once again. They're out with a brand new line of putters, introducing the AI1 putters, where you putt smarter. Having two absolutely incredible looking designs featuring a unique navy blue PVD finish. These putters look great. Featuring an all new and updated Stroke Lab 90 shaft, featuring its lightweight steel, depending on the grip size, obviously, a little counterbalance in there as well. It's going to appeal to even more golfers, but it uses artificial intelligence to help make a face that gets you more consistent ball speed from even off center hits and gets you closer to the hole. Now, there's a firmer feel, our model called the milled version, and then obviously you have the AI1, which is the white hot face, which everybody knows and loves, which is that softer insert. So head to CallawayGolf.com, check out the Odyssey section where you can see these latest line of putters. They come in all your favorites, and I guarantee you one's going to be in a bag near you. If you are looking for a brand to wear both on the golf course and off the golf course, guys, I got a brand just for you. Head over to DonaldRoss.com where you can check out the latest from Donald Ross Sportswear. It features great clothing pieces with high performance qualities and great looking clothes, from short sleeve to long sleeve, great pants and accessories, and so much more, featuring two great lines, kind of the classic line and the sport line, which is for a little tighter, more trimmer fit for that modern golfer. Just this season, just for you, you can use the discount code LFrazier-DR at checkout to save yourself 10% this holiday season. And if you want a brand that looks amazing, trust me, like I do, I love it. Head over to DonaldRoss.com for more information. Now, back to the episode. So we are, if you're just joining, talking to Steve Sands of the Golf Channel is my guest today. We're looking overall at journalism, looking at golf, how it's evolved over time. One thing that is, I should say, about to evolve in the upcoming weeks. We're probably within a couple of days. We've heard the leaks, we've heard the news rumors that the golf ball is going to be rolled back for the time. Tiger Woods is a fan of having the golf bag rolled back. Apparently he's been saying it since the day he came on tour, which, look at the evidence, it's there. A lot of the more younger golfers, your JTs, your Ricky Fowlers, aren't a fan of it. And then your colleague, Brandon Chambly, I think, gave an excellent explanation the other day on kind of how he sits and views this golf ball bifurcation by the, RNA and the USGA rolling it back. Me being a PGA golf professional, it is what it is. If they roll it back, they roll it back. If they don't, they don't. I don't think they need to, because the kids that are playing golf now, within the upcoming weeks, Tiger Woods is playing in the father-son PNC Challenge with his son, who's 14 now, which is insane to say. He's not getting any shorter, and he's just going to get hitting the golf ball even longer. Where do you kind of think this is going to add some division in the game? If it does go through, obviously we got a long time before it, passes, if it gets approved. But where is this golf ball debate going?
I think it's going to go to court. I think that the manufacturers are going to try to, win this in court. When the RNA and the USGA, the governing bodies of the sport, the RNA does the rest of the world, whereas the USGA is involved with the United States and Mexico. And I think that They're going to roll the ball back because of a few things: sustainability, land. They're running out of grass, and they need to make sure that the golf ball doesn't go keeps going farther and farther and farther every single year to just make some of these great golf courses obsolete in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years or 80 years from now. And one of the things that makes golf so great is the history of it. And the history of it includes the great golf courses. Well, if those golf courses, Langston, are obsolete because they're just too short to deal with the technology of the game and making all these golf balls go so far, then that's not good for golf. I do think that the USGA and the R&A should have done this a long time ago, and we wouldn't be sitting here talking about it. But they let it go and go and go, and now they feel like they really have to do something about it. So I do think that one of the manufacturers, maybe all of them, are going to sue. That's the first thing. But I'm with Tiger. Bifurcation is a very fancy word. Never heard of it until I started covering golf on TV. Do we play the same golf courses as them? Yes. Do we play the same equipment as the professionals? What?
For the most part.
For the most part. But your 6-iron and Rory McIlroy's 6-iron are not the same.
Oh, night and day.
So the idea that there isn't already bifurcation in the game is a false notion. So to me, this is just another step in ensuring that the game is preserved through the years, and that there's an understanding that the PGA Tour and us are so different. We play the same game as them, Langston, but it's a totally different sport. I mean, come on, these guys are the best players in the world. So do we have to play the same golf ball as them? Or can we play a version of the golf ball? Titleist and Callaway and TaylorMade, they'll all tell you, no, that has to be the same because that's how they market it. But in reality, by the way, I have nothing wrong with those companies, no problem with what they're doing. But in reality, the governing bodies should have gotten a hold of this years and years and years ago. We wouldn't be sitting here right now. So I think it's really hard to stop technology. And I think that the USGA and the R&A are going to try to curb it a little bit, and it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out, because I think there'll be some legal challenges for sure from the manufacturing side, and we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out in court.
It's an interesting take on probably one of the hottest issues kind of in the industry right now in regards to what the golf ball is going to do. If it's going to stay where it is, I think in the long term, I think it will change. In terms of majors, pros play one golf ball. I don't think they need to touch the amateur side. I think the high level amateur side, maybe. On the professional side, I think it's going to come a time, because you can't in these golf courses, 7,000 plus yards.
Right.
That it's just not going to sustain in the long term. Let's
I think they do things differently than we do. They are so much better at this sport than we are, that you're talking about tens of millions of golfers in the world and 150 to 200 PGA Tour players. I don't think we have to be playing the exact same golf ball as them. I think that, for us to enjoy the game is important for the economics of the game, to go play, pay fees. If we're lucky enough to be able to join a club, to, ride a cart, to buy new golf balls and clubs, when we need them over time, after wearing them down a little bit. I don't know, whatever it is. By the way, professionals don't pay for their golf balls, Langston. We pay for our golf balls. And if the price of all of this gets transferred to the consumer, that's going to be really bad for the game. Golf balls are expensive enough as they are. If they become more expensive to us, they're not going to be more expensive to the pros. Pros aren't paying for the golf balls. So if that new research and development, or the cost of doing business, or the perceived loss in revenue because you're not able to market the PGA Tour players the same way you do now with the new rules, because we'll be playing different golf balls than them, if that money gets transferred in an expensive way to the general public, that's going to be really bad for golf, Langston. The game is expensive enough. The game takes time. And those two things are not curbing the growth of the game, but they're not helping. It takes a long time to play golf, and it's expensive. Well, let's try some other hobby, or let's try another avenue, or let's get our kids involved in something else that's not as expensive and it doesn't take as long. If that becomes reality and it becomes more expensive because of this new rule change, then I'm completely against it. We'll have to wait and see how it plays out.
Let's change gears. You enter the golf space or the journalism space. Who inspired you to kind of get into the sports journalism world? Was it an article that you read or a TV show that you watched when you were younger that said, okay, that's it. That's for me?
Well, I remember when I was growing up and I just loved sports. That's all I ever did was sports. All I cared about was sports. My mother used to joke, if you knew as much about English and math and science as you did about scores from football games, perhaps you could be somebody one day. She used to joke with me about that all the time. Listen, I have a lot of mentors and heroes, but I'd have to go back to a couple of local guys in DC. Glenn Brenner was at Channel 9. George Michael was at Channel 4, and Steve Buckhands, who's a dear friend of mine now, was at Channel 5. And they were, and still, Glenn's no longer alive, neither is George, but Steve is. They were great at their job, Langston. They made it seem fun. They were entertaining. They were enlightening. They were just great, all three of them. And I remember when I started doing this, thinking, boy, those three are my guys. And then as I got a little bit older and got to meet some more people in the business, Dan Hicks from NBC Sports is a huge mentor of mine, is a colleague. Jim Nance, huge mentor of mine, a colleague. Mike Tirico, Joe Buck. You know, I always wanted to be Pat Summerall and Brent Musburger. I remember meeting Brent Musburger and I thought I was going to like fall over. I felt like like a teenager in the 60s meeting the Beatles for the first time. And Brent Musburger has always been my idol. I loved him growing up, and watching him and listening to him all through the years was always just a huge thing for me on a personal level. And professionally, I thought he was fabulous. But all those guys have been huge influences. They've helped along the way. They've been there as sounding boards, and they've just been good. They've passed it forward. Paying it forward is a big thing. Like me and you doing this. I think it's really important to pay it forward. I think I wanted to be where they are. I don't know exactly where you want to be. Maybe it's where I am or someone else is in the business. Whatever it is, you pay it forward and you help the kids out. And those guys were always so good to me, and they still are. But man, if I could pick one hero in the business, man, I mean, Brent Musburger, George Michael, and Glenn Brenner were my guys. It'd be real hard to differentiate between those guys. They're all such legends in the business to me.
Solid choices. You talk about kind of journalism being constant. It changes, it has evolutions, but it's still the same thing, and you're still covering the game of golf. What's your advice to young journalists as this game continues to evolve, and for journalists that want to be in the broadcasting field or in the writing field?
Be authentic, be yourself, gain the trust of the athletes, the coaches, the general managers, the instructors, the tour officials, whatever league, whatever sport you're doing. And that trust is, by the way, it's two ways, but it's more on them than on you. You have to earn their trust, because if you don't earn their trust, then the athletes are never going to, speak freely to you. They're never going to, get close enough to you where they feel like they can tell you things to enhance the broadcast, so that the audience is feeling a little bit closer to the athletes and the competition who they're rooting for or against or what they're watching. And I think that, follow your dreams, follow the path. It's not always paved. It can be rocky at times. But if this is what you really want to do, be true to yourself, be authentic, be open, be transparent, and do your homework and prepare and be ready, and I think athletes, everybody involved in sports professionally, can see through someone pretty quickly if they're not prepared and if they don't really know what they're talking about. There's no better way to make a living than to be involved in sports. I can promise you that. I cannot imagine ever having a real job. I've never had one in my life as an adult. But I think it's important that you work hard, play hard. I think you take your profession seriously. Even though it's fun games and it's just sports, just in quotations, sports, it's still what you do. And you've got to take the profession seriously. You don't have to take yourself seriously, but you should take the profession seriously.
I got 3 more things for you, and I'll let you go. First thing, you talk about preparation and being prepared for the role that you'll want, and when you're covering athletes to gain their trust. How do you gain an athlete's trust when you get put in a situation like covering the Olympics, and you're not covering that sport regularly on a regular basis compared to taking you out of your norm, like covering golf and covering the Winter Olympics?
I'll never forget in 2014, I got assigned to do speed skating in the Winter Games in Sochi, Russia. And at the time, the biggest speed skater in the world was a guy named Sven Kramer from the Netherlands. I mean, an absolute beast. He was great. And he was the Michael Jordan of the Tiger Woods of the Netherlands. I mean, he was that big of a deal. And I remember going to the Olympics and meeting him for the first time. And people ask me this all the time. How do you meet athletes? How do you gain their trust? How can you talk to them? How can you get them to open up to you? You have to spend time with them, Langston. You have to get to know them. You know, I was more interested in meeting Sven Kramer and asking about his family and how he started speed skating and what drove him to this sport. And, you know, talk to him about things that are not just about the game itself, or in this case, speed skating, or whatever the sport is. Talk to them about life, their mom and dad, their brothers and sisters. What's it like growing up in the Netherlands? How big of a deal is this or that? You just start to get to know him. And then the next day you walk by him when he's on the track and he's training. He gives you a little head bob and says, "Hey, how you doing, man?" And then you wait around and you talk to him for a couple of minutes afterwards. And, you know, he's a guy who doesn't give his time to a lot of people because his time is always being stretched by so many people. And I remember thinking, boy, it'd be amazing after he wins the gold medal in the 5,000 if he would stop and do something with us on NBC. You know, we're not the host broadcaster in Russia. We're not the host broadcaster in the Netherlands. We don't know him as well as all these other people do. But you build that relationship through time and through effort. I remember like the 3rd or 4th day of training, we were already on the air for a day, I think, maybe not yet for a day. And I had seen him for about 3 or 4 days in a row. And he said to me, he goes, "You're here again?" And I said, "Sven, if you're working, we're working." I said, "I know you know this, and you don't need to hear it from me, but you're the biggest deal here." I said, "And I'm trying to get to know you. You don't care to know me. So it's up to me to be here when you're working." So every day I would find out, I would call, it's not like it was a secret, find out the training regimen of the Netherlands team, or because I think it's important. When I first met Tiger, we went through the same thing. He's like, "Man, what are you doing here so early?" I said, "If you're working, we're working. You know, you've got to get to know them and they need to get to know you." And when you start asking them about life and family and sports and school and whatever, they start eventually asking you about you and your life, what's going on with you and that kind of stuff. And he knew it was my first ever Olympics doing speed skating, and he knew it was a big deal. And he would rough me up all the time about it. And we got to know each other over the course of the couple of weeks we were there. Not to the point where we're friendly, or we were friendly, but not friends. I don't have his cell phone number, nothing like that. But to the point where we became recognizable enough face to face that he felt comfortable. And when he did skate in the Olympics, he did stop and did it with us at NBC. And that was a really big deal. And it was a good get. And I think, again, that stuff is earned, Langston. You know, that you have to go get that. You can't let them come to you. They're the show. We're just clowns in the circus. We need to get to know them so that they can then trust and get to know us. And that's very important for us to realize they're the show, not us.
something that's about the show that kind of that I picture in my mind is storytelling, accurately portraying the story of the athletes or the managers or whatever sport you're covering. Something you got to do a few years ago in your hometown was cover the BMW Championship at Caves Valley up in Baltimore, Owings Mills technically, but people call it Baltimore.
Right.
What was that experience like for you? Storytelling something that's in your backyard, and hopefully you've had the opportunity to play the course, but be there in person in your hometown. You're not sleeping in a hotel, on property or around the corner. You get to sleep at home if you really want to in Maryland, stay at family's house. What was that opportunity like for you?
Well, first of all, I've never played Caves Valley because Gary Abman and Mike Udek and all my buddies there have never invited me, Langston. So I don't know what to tell you. I've never ever played the golf course. I don't know how to get on there. So that's the first thing. I kid. I love those guys. It was a lot of people who I had not been around a long time. And I think that Maryland hosting an event of that stature was a huge, huge thing for Caves. It was huge for Baltimore. It was huge for the state of Maryland. I think it was great for golf in the whole area. And, on a personal level, and it's not about me, but man, it was fun being home. It was cool to see so many friends and family. And it was a neat experience. It was a more powerful experience than I thought it was going to be. I just figured, whatever, I'm gonna be home, whatever. But it's the big leagues, and it was a big event. And it was a great finish, best finish of the year. Bryson DeChambeau and Patrick Cantley going on head to head in a playoff. It was awesome. Crowds were huge. The energy was just off the charts. Great. It was awesome. It was a lot of fun being home. Like I said to you earlier, home is really important to me, and that will always be home to me. Maryland and DC, and Baltimore to some extent. So it was a very cool experience to be able to be at a big event like that in your home state.
One more question for you, and then we get to the fun, quickie, fast questions here. What's diversity in golf looking like over the next 5 to 10 years as you start to transition out of your role and you say, okay, I've done my time, I've had enough. It's time for the next group of journalists to do your job. What's diversity in golf look like to you?
I think diversity is key to the growth of the game. I think the game has gotten to this point at a certain level of diversity, and I think that there is a lot more room for growth there. And I think if golf can accomplish what it truly wants to accomplish, but hasn't quite figured out how to do it just yet, that doesn't mean they're not working on it. It doesn't mean that they're not trying. It just means that it's not quite translated to all communities in the United States and across the globe. I think if diversity can truly take place in this sport, and there are economic issues there are time issues there, there's space issues there, equipment issues there, where golf courses are, how accessible they are, how accessible are current courses now to the kids who are growing up, who are going to be the future of the game. And I don't mean just on the PGA Tour, Langston. I mean people like me and you are never going to play the PGA Tour, but want to play golf and spend money in the sport and grow the game. I think diversity is the absolute number one growth spurt that has yet to take place in the sport. And if they ever do get a hold of how to truly diversify the game, I think that we could go from tens of millions of golfers around the world to hundreds of millions of golfers around the world. And, we're entrusting the people who run the game to make those types of decisions. And I hope they choose them wisely.
Welcome to the final stretch. You've reached the end of the interview. I'm going to give you 7 questions here. Rapid fire, you give me your answers. Here's the first question. What's your career round of golf?
71.
Favorite course?
St. Andrews.
What's in
the
your
old course? The old course, St. Andrews.
What's in your bag?
A lot of clubs that just aren't working well enough for me right now. I can tell you that. I have Titleist clubs, an Odyssey putter, I stink right now, Langston. I hate the game right now. Can't talk about it.
What's your best golf memory?
My best golf memory was playing the old course at St. Andrews with my dad and my two brothers. I've also played Augusta National, by the way, with my dad and one of my brothers. But being able to play with both of my brothers and my dad at the old course at St. Andrews, to me, is the greatest golfing experience of my life.
What is your pet peeve on the golf course?
Slow play. Good gosh, pick it up. Let's go. What are we doing here? I don't mean pick it up like pick it up from 5 feet. I mean, none of us are any good. You might as well get around quickly and go enjoy that beer at the end of the round, half hour, 45 minutes sooner than you should. People who take their time and are too slow on the golf course, by the way, take your time and have a nice pace, but don't take your time to the point where you're slowing up 5 groups behind you. Play the game at a relatively congenial pace, but also at a pace that's, palpable if you're playing with somebody. Let's go already. You're going to hit a lousy shot whether you take your time or not. So you might as well get going.
What's your dream foursome, dead or alive?
Ooh, man. Bruce Springsteen, Barack Obama, and Halle Berry, for obvious reasons. We'll leave it at that.
I like it. And the final question, I got to end on a journalism question. What is your favorite call that you've made over your career, or a call that you have yet to make that you want to make?
I tell you what, Langston, I've joked around with this before with Tiger. Tiger has 82 career victories on the PGA Tour. He's tied with Sam Snead for the most wins in the history of the sport. Jim Nance, Pat Summerall, Dan Hicks, Mike Tirico, Dick Enberg, Jim Lampley a little bit maybe. These are all Hall of Fame sportscasters, and they've called every one of Tiger's wins, almost every one of them. I was on the call for his 82nd career victory, his career-tying victory on the PGA Tour, which could very well be his last ever win. So when he's popping in whatever the device is when he's a grandfather, just to see that last hole of his last ever victory, if 82 is his last one, which ties the career, passes it, but ties it. That poor guy, Tiger, is going to have to listen to me call that, as opposed to one of those legends in sportscasting. I was with Frank Nobilo in Tokyo at the Zozo Championship when Tiger won his 82nd PGA Tour win, and we were the ones who took him home down the 18th hole when he got that victory. So there can't be a better call for me as far as in my life and my broadcasting career, which has been incredibly lucky, very fortunate. But to be able to call the greatest player of his generation, arguably the greatest player of all time, his last ever win, if it is his last win, and it was to tie Sam Snead for the most wins in the history of the PGA Tour, that would be the call I will remember most.
And here's that call from the Zozo Championship in October 2019.
He's thinking the exact same thing right here at the par 5 18. Good shot. Safely on the green. Make room on the mountaintop. Tiger Woods has matched Sam Snead with 82 PGA Tour wins, the most of all time. The first ever PGA Tour event in Japan goes to Tiger Woods. That poor guy's got to listen to me call that instead of all those legends, Langston. That's not good.
Well, you say, legends of the game. You're a legend yourself. You've been in the game a long time. It's a voice that I love to hear on a Sunday afternoon. And I don't say that lightly. Tiger Woods obviously is hopefully gonna play in 2024. Obviously, he's playing again at the PNC in just a few weeks in December in Orlando, but then he's playing in 2024, and hopefully the 83rd call is hopefully your voice, and will be it, and he can say, "All right, I'm done. I'll walk away," like
You
he's
never
been
know.
saying for years. But
You never know. You never know, my man. You never know.
But Steve, it's been an absolute pleasure. I thank you for the time, inspiring me, inspired the next generation of journalists who get to sit on a Sunday afternoon and get to watch it 4 days out of the week. I wish it was more. Next time you're in Maryland, let's definitely link up because we keep missing each other at the side of basketball games and everything else. But we'll catch up one day soon and have a bite and grab some great rounds of golf together. So let's do it soon.
Would love that, Langston. It was an honor to be on your show. Congratulations on all your great work.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Steve Sands of the Golf Channel. He's a great guy and has really become a really cool mentor for me over these last few years. If you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to share the episode. Subscribe to the Langston and Fraser Show podcast wherever you get your favorite podcast. Share it with a friend, and let me know. Reach out to me. Connect with me on social media. I'm at Langston Fraser on practically everything. You connect with me there using the hashtag TLFSPod, and let me know what topics you want me to cover in the golf industry and who you want to hear from next on the show. If you've enjoyed it, there's a lot more to come. I'm already lining up my guest list for 2024. It's going to be another season of great interviews and great people on the show. So I hope you enjoy. Stick tuned till then. Have a great holiday season. If I don't get to see you before the New Year's, if I do, I'll see you in a couple of weeks. Of course, check out all the episodes of the Langston Fraser Show available wherever you get your favorite podcasts. But until then, I'll see you on another episode of the Langston Fraser Show.